Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now today we're taking a look at the RTX 3060 laptop GPU. Of course the 3060 laptop version does come as part of laptops and it's only as good as the hardware that it's bundled with. That can also be said for desktop machines, but we have a lot more upgradability as far as those are concerned. This thing however is paired with an i5-11400H, a 6-core 12-thread chip, 16 gigs of DDR4 3200MHz memory and Windows 11. This has been my daily machine for recording and sometimes editing gameplay, but it's mainly my recording rig hooked up to a capture box as well as OBS. I really enjoy it. I think it's a great machine. I've had it for a few years now and I thought we'd give it a chance to play some games for itself today and see how it handles them. We'll be throwing in a few modern titles as well as a couple of games that are a few years old. I'll also be enabling ray tracing in a couple of games as well. Something I probably wouldn't recommend with this 3060 laptop GPU, but we may have to enable DLSS as well. But let's get into it and start with our first title. This is GTA 5 Enhanced. You may recognise some of the footage from yesterday's video whereby we tested this and the 3060 laptop GPU. As you can see here, we're averaging over 80 frames per second, 87 to be precise, with a 1% low of 70 and a 0.1% low of 63. This is with the RT option set to high and everything else set to very high with DLAA. We could enable TAA, but I think DLAA looks better. Performance wise, as you can see, it's holding up pretty well. Though I expected as much, because although this has received a sort of next gen update, if you will, it is still GTA 5 underneath and it is getting on in years now. The new lighting really makes a nice difference in some areas in my opinion though. For CS2, we're running at medium with anti-aliasing switched off for 149 FPS. The 1% low was 61 and the 0.1% low was 46. I think we can probably upgrade the RAM of this machine if necessary, and you may find that that is helpful with newer games. As far as the processor is concerned though, it still seems to be okay, though you may notice it becoming the limiting factor in a few titles, and especially at this resolution as well. This has a 1080p 144Hz display. I actually tried to target that in CS2 and we hit 149, so job well done. We could run it at low for an even higher frame rate, but I thought medium sort of gives us a nice balance between visuals and performance. May not be the main focus for you though in online competitive titles, of course. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is up next, and even at medium it looks absolutely fantastic. No upscaling involved here. SMAA 2TX was enabled for 81 frames per second on average, a 1% low of 66 and a 0.1% low of 60. I've shown you footage from a couple of different areas here because this foresty area will be a little more demanding than when we're in town just messing about with the local NPCs. The average was pretty good. We could potentially push it to higher visual quality settings, especially if we want to enable DLSS, but I wanted to keep any upscaling off unless we really needed it today to give you a better idea of how the 3060 is holding up natively. Sorry, the 3060 laptop GPU. Marvel Rivals, medium here, but I did turn GI or global illumination and reflections off. I had DLAA switched on, however, for an average of 123 FPS. We did see a few frame dips and drops here and there. I think this is a CPU limitation in certain areas, but for the most part, the graphics card is hitting its maximum potential. That being said, if you keep an eye on the on-screen overlay today, you will notice at points it drops to like 70-80% utilization, and that does indicate a CPU limit. But Marvel Rivals is running pretty well overall. Spider-Man 2 up next, medium with DLAA once again for 68 frames per second on average. Now I'd probably suggest enabling DLSS for this one, especially if you want to go with a higher preset, but as I said before, try to keep things at native today. Native 1080p with medium, DLAA for 68 FPS, a 1% low of 42 and a 0.1% low of 30. Now this is a game that often exhibits frame dips and drops across a wide variety of hardware that I test, so it was inevitable that we were going to get a few issues. Add to that the fact that the CPU once again is the limitation in some areas, especially in those busier city scenes. You're going to see here flying through this tunnel that we do see a drop in GPU utilization and of course the frame rate. I've included Red Dead Redemption 1 because I really like the game. Now that it's come to PC as well, I wanted to test it a little bit more. Runs pretty well, and on the 3060 laptop GPU, which is configured at 80 watts, it seems, out of the box. I've done nothing else but set max performance on the battery and installed the latest drivers, of which are still supported here. And this one runs with over 100 FPS. It's capped at 144. We're getting 110 with a 1% low of 76 and a 0.1% low of 70. So a nice consistent result overall. For The Witcher 3 Next Gen 1080p Ultra here, at first it was quite stuttery, and that was with the high preset, and I thought, what's going wrong? And it turns out I had screen space reflections on and set to high, so this did give us a huge dip in performance, about 30 FPS less than we were getting here. With that disabled, I then switched the preset to Ultra and enabled TAA for 80 FPS, though it is a little bit let down by that 0.1% figure, of which was 21 FPS. Now for Cyberpunk 2077, I tested both non-ray tracing and ray tracing here. First of all, we have ray tracing switched off and the medium settings with the medium crowds for a surprising 68 FPS on average. The 1% low was 40 and the 0.1% low was 32. This did better than I was anticipating, especially considering that we don't have any upscaling enabled here. This is native 1080p gameplay, and it's important to remember, of course, that the 3060 laptop GPU is a 6 gig card. So considering that as well, I think it's a pretty decent set of results thus far. When we enable ray tracing and go with the Ultra preset, of course, because if you want RT on, you're going to want to make the most of it, I think. We're going to need DLSS performance ideally, and even so, while the average is okay, 45 frames per second, we do run out of VRAM pretty fast. So yeah, there are going to be a few issues, especially in those busier areas with a lot going on, a lot of puddles, for example, where there are a lot of reflections as well. Busier parts of the city are going to really slow the frame rate down, but overall I think it's better than I thought. Now when it comes to Starfield, we have a couple of options. We have 1080p lowest to start with for 50 frames per second, a 1% low of 32 and a 0.1% low of 17. This looks okay, but there are certainly some performance issues, and there's nothing we can really do to hit a consistent plus 60 FPS average. Once again, I think because there is a CPU limitation at play here as well. But as I said before, I think this combination is doing okay. I thought at this point, well, we may as well just bump the graphical preset up as well if we're going to enable DLSS, because it shouldn't perform that differently, especially if our CPU is the limitation here in Aquila. And what I did next then was go with the medium preset with DLSS balanced for 47 FPS, so 3 FPS less for a game that looks a lot better. And actually this time around our 0.1% low figure was better, 21 compared to 17 previously, and our 1% low wasn't actually that different either, 29 compared to 32 beforehand. So I think plus 40 FPS is a reasonable target for this one with this hardware, and overall it was a more playable gameplay experience than I initially anticipated. Alright, so I'm going to be honest with you, I meant to test Avowed with different hardware a long time ago. I tested it with the 580 and said, yeah, I'll do more benchmarks with this one, but I just could not get into the game. I played it for a couple of hours, but I just was not enjoying it, to be honest. I've got back into it a little bit more now. I'm still very early on, but you just sort of know sometimes whether or not you're going to like a game. I could be completely wrong. Some of you are probably going to tell me I should have been a bit more patient, but I'm going to get into it. I'm going to try again with this one, get a bit further on, and hopefully include it more often in the benchmark results. Here with the low preset running on the 3060 laptop GPU and i5-11400H, we're seeing 76 FPS with a 1% low of 50 and a 0.1% low of 25, so not bad at all. Our penultimate game is Fortnite at medium. Just like in CS2, you're going to want as many frames as possible, I think, because this is an online title, but there's no reason why we can't bump the graphical settings up a little bit just to enjoy slightly better visuals. Of course, if you're super keen on getting as many FPS as you possibly can, then maybe, yeah, just chuck everything on low and be done with it. But I did wonder if we could still push things and maintain the laptop screen's refresh rate, and we got exactly that, 144 FPS on average with medium and 100% resolution scaling here, so not bad. Finally then we have Red Dead Redemption 2. This is with the ultra textures and everything else set to medium for an average of 86 FPS, 1% low of 61 and a 0.1% low of 55. This did better than I thought once again. Even in and around towns and cities, the i5 11400H was holding up pretty well. We sort of have to focus on that as well because there are going to be loads of different configurations. With a desktop GPU test, we can just pair it with a really great CPU that we know isn't going to cause any bottlenecking issues, but when it comes to laptop GPU testing, we have to take the full package into consideration. And sure, we do a bit better with a more powerful CPU, perhaps more RAM, but as it is, I think this thing has done pretty well today, and still certainly worth a buy if you're looking for a more portable gaming experience. Though having said that, you're best using it plugged in and set to max performance. I'm definitely more keen on desktop systems than I am laptops, but it's nice to see the 3060 laptop GPU still doing alright in 2025. Thanks for watching, let me know your thoughts down below, and hopefully I'll see you all in the next one.